Okay, let's see if this is any different. And I don't know if anyone's going to join me. I don't know how to check this. This is so weird. Maybe if I'm using my phone, that'll work better. I'm going to wait to see if someone pops in here. Oh, you can hear it? Yes. Thank you. Okay, great. Thank you so much. I'm so glad you're here. Thank you. And I know there are some others who were here, like ready to roll, and I'm so grateful. Thank you for patience that I've worked on. Okay, let's try it. Take two. Hi. Yeah, so here's the thing. I'm going to go live every day around 3, and I want to do a story time. This is not your child's bedtime story time. This is, let's be honest about some things, story time. And I'm going to read through a biblical passage, and it might be a part of a chapter, it might be an entire chapter, it might be parts of several, like Samson, I'll do parts of several, and it might just be a few verses. I'm looking ahead to the next few days. But the thing is, what I'm interested in doing in this for the month of June is I'm interested in looking at biblical passages that engage something related to sex, the relationships that we refer to as marriage, and some form of physical abuse that involves genitalia, right? So I don't like the phrase sexual assault because I do think that leads to some of the misunderstandings of the difference between rape and sex. Sex is a thing that is not abuse. So I don't want to ever call abuse. Anyway, I think you might get my point. If you don't, that's okay. So I'm just going to read. I'm going to come in here and I'm going to start reading, and I'm going to read through a story, a passage in scripture. And I'd like you, if you can, to just set aside all of the things that you think you know and believe about a story. And so I'm just going to read through it, just let it affect you. And then we're going to talk about the piece of it that is related to what I've just said, one of those segments. Okay. And I'm going to start in Genesis chapter 1, and we're going to go through step by step, and we'll see how this goes. And I'm going to use a real Bible, like a tangible one, because it makes me feel a little bit more like I'm reading a story, having a book in my hand. And so we're going to start with Genesis 1, and I'm going to read the first creation story. Again, I'm not trying to make this like a whole teaching thing, but it's hard for me not to. The first creation story spills over into chapter 2, so I'm going to read the first couple verses of chapter 2 as well. And so just let me read it. Just take it in. Don't be doing all the little thoughts that you have about this and that. Just listen. And then we'll circle back to the part that people think, in this case, relates to marriage. But I don't think it does. So there's that. In the beginning, when God created the heavens and the earth was a formless void, and darkness covered the face of the deep, while a wind from God swept over the face of the waters. Then God said, "Let there be light." And there was light. Maybe I should make my voice female. That's too much all at once. Okay. And God saw that the light was good. And God separated the light from the darkness. And God called the light day, and the darkness God called night. And there was evening, and there was morning, the first day. And God said, "Let there be a dome in the midst of the waters, and let it separate the waters from the waters." So God made the dome and separated the waters that were under the dome from the waters that were above the dome. And it was so. God called the dome sky. And there was evening and there was morning, the second day. And God said, "Let the waters under the sky be gathered together into one place, and let the dry land appear." And it was so. God called the dry land earth, and the waters that were gathered together he called seas. And God saw that it was good. Then God said, "Let the earth bring forth vegetation, plants yielding seed, and fruit trees of every kind on earth that bear fruit with the seed in it." And it was so. The earth brought forth vegetation, plants yielding seed of every kind, and trees of every kind bearing fruit with the seed in it. And God saw that it was good. And there was evening and there was morning the third day. And God said, "Let there be lights in the dome of the sky to separate the day from the night. And let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and for years. And let them be lights in the dome of the sky to give light upon the earth." And it was so. God made the two great lights, the greater light to rule the day and the lesser light to rule the night, and the stars. God set them in the dome of the sky to give light upon the earth, to rule over the day and over the night, and to separate the light from the darkness. And God saw that it was good. And there was evening and there was morning the fourth day. And God said, "Let the waters bring forth swarms of living creatures, and let birds fly above the earth across the dome of the sky." So God created the great sea monsters of every living creature that moves, and every kind with which the waters swarm, and every winged bird of every kind. And God saw that it was good. And God blessed them, saying, "Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters and the seas, and let birds multiply on the earth." And there was evening and there was morning the fifth day. And God said, "Let the earth bring forth living creatures of every kind, cattle and creeping things, and wild animals of the earth of every kind." And it was so. God made the wild animals of the earth of every kind, and the cattle of every kind, and everything that creeps upon the ground of every kind. And God saw that it was good. Then God said, "Let us make humankind in our image, according to our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the wild animals of the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps upon the earth." So God created humankind. Whoops. Hold that thought. God created humankind. We'll come back to that. This has been a fun little technical, adventure here. Okay. So God created humankind in his image. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them. God blessed them. And God said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the earth and subdue it, and have dominion." Hilarious. Okay, that's good stuff. You gotta love going live. Yeah. Let me back up a second. "Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the air, and over every living thing that moves upon the earth." God said, "See, I've given you every plant yielding seed that is upon the face of all the earth, and every tree with seed in its fruit. You shall have them for food. And to every beast of the earth, and to every bird of the air, and to everything that creeps on the earth, everything that has the breath of life, I have given every green plant for food." I'm going to pause and just point out that everybody on the planet was, according to the story, vegan. Including all the animals. And there was evening and there was morning the sixth day. Thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all their multitude. And on the seventh day, God finished the work that God had done. And God rested on the seventh day from all the work that God had done. So God blessed the seventh day and hallowed it, because on it, God rested from all the work that God had done in creation. These are the generations of the heavens and the earth when they were created. End of first creation story. So I just paused in the middle of verse 4 of chapter 2, in case you're curious. Second half of verse 4 starts the second creation story, and we will we'll read some of that tomorrow. Okay. So Genesis 1 and parts of 2, first creation story, and the focus is on sex and marriage and any form of physical abuse related to genitalia. Just get used to that phrase because I'm going to use it every day. Here's the thing, folks. I'm not even looking in the comments right now. I will look in the comments in just a moment because I think you're here and I want to banter with you if you're here. But let me just say a couple things, okay? Genesis 1:28 is a passage that many people use to say something specific about marriage. And when I read through this story, I don't hear God trying to establish um, a uh, a cultural, social uh, institution called marriage. I see God populating, like I see a divine being populating the planet, taking a I mean, we could go all kinds of ways at this if we want, right? We could get real serious about what's being described, or we could be very metaphorical about what's being described. So I'd rather go metaphorical for now and just say, look, there's a divine being. There's a planet out there that's floating around, and right, because it starts out that's already established, right? The planet's already there, and God just does some messing with it, and separating waters, and putting clouds appear, and stars, and suns, moons, and all kinds of good stuff. And then makes living things happen on the planet, and then makes living creatures happen on the planet, and then all the things, and then the things, and the thing, right? And we've got humans as part of it. And it's this beautiful thing. And God tells all of the animals to be fruitful and multiply, and God tells the human animals to be fruitful and multiply. And that's all that we have going on, and saying, you take care of things, right? There is nothing about this story in the way that I read it that says this is about marriage. But so many people, starting long before Jesus hit the scene, so many people have read this command to the man and woman, to the first, to the humans, to be fruitful and multiply. They've connected that to marriage instead of just letting it be what it is, which is go get busy filling the planet. Okay. Did anybody actually need to be told to get busy making babies? Like, did humans actually ever need to be told to go get busy having sex? Like, did their sex drive not kick in until some being from the heavens said, hey, you've got a sex drive? I don't think so, right? Did anyone need to be told to go get busy multiplying? No. Pretty sure people figured that out, right? What is this story doing, right? That's a whole, it's a whole different context. We want to talk about what is this story doing in context, and for whom was it written? And that's stuff I talk about in the first chapter in the book that's coming out soon. But what is it doing? It's talking about things on the planet. Is it talking about a human institution? Is it talking about a thing that we refer to as marriage? Two people, specifically hetero in this case, getting together and God ordaining that as a thing? No, actually, no. God creates male and female and tells them to be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth, and be vegans. You could talk to some friends who might have a thing about this and point out to them verse 29, which says everybody, including all the omnivores and carnivores out there, are supposed to be vegan, which is not quite the way it plays out. This is a story, right? It's a story, and it's a really fun, beautiful story, very poetic, right? Kind of similar beat going on. Really lovely story that's trying to talk about a grand scheme. But there's nothing said here about marriage. There's not even a gesture of a man taking a woman, which is what marriage looks like in the rest of the Hebrew Bible. A man goes out and purchases or claims a woman and has sex with her, and that's how everybody knows that she's his. He's marked his territory. I'm not kidding. Sounds like a dog lifting their leg to pee on a tree. It's kind of the way it worked. But we don't even see that in this story. All we see is God telling the humans to be fruitful, multiply, have dominion over things, and to be vegan. And it just keeps flowing. It's just everybody's happy. It's this beautiful world. No question, people associate this with marriage today because we've been taught, many of us, to think about procreating only as reserved appropriately for marriage. And in fact, the day that I first realized that's how I was reading this, it wasn't that long ago. It was just a few years ago that I realized I was doing that on the story, right? It's how I was raised to think about it and hadn't sat down to specifically question that. So no one is ever going to challenge, right, that it takes a male and a female to reproduce, right? Except for Jesus and that miraculous thing going on. But that's a whole different thing, because genetically he would be a little bit different from a typical male, wouldn't he? So no, we've got a story, we've got a thing talking about filling the earth. And when people use this story and say, this is what God declared for all time, what they're really doing is not acknowledging context. For whom was this written? This was written for a small group of people who really wanted to establish themselves in the territory, who wanted to be big enough to claim some territory, who wanted to stop being trounced on by all these other peoples passing through. And so, sure, grow in numbers. That's part of how you do that, right? But I know that many people watching this are probably on the same page with me on this, but just in case you're not, to say that God says to go be fruitful and multiply as if that's an all-time thing. First, like I said, nobody needed to be told that, right? To think that we needed to be told that as humans and we wouldn't have reproduced if it weren't for the story. No, let's reconsider that. Second, it's just not ethically sound to insist that sexual encounters need to be reproductive. It is not ethically sound in the 21st century. We have an overpopulation issue, and it's egregiously off base to say that sex needs to be reproductive. No. We got plenty of people who are accidentally doing that. We don't need everybody to only be engaging in reproductive sex. And so what you'll find if you watch any of these or hang in there for some of these, right, over at any point over the month, what you'll find is the conversations about sex and what people label as marriage all come back to this conversation, these same issues. It's about reproduction, and marriage is about sex and men claiming women's bodies. It is very hetero in this book, but that's partly because of our own misguided focus, and it's partly because we're reading something onto some of these stories. So this is going on 17 minutes long. So I wasn't sure how long this was going to take. I'm going to look at and see if there are a couple comments or questions that need to be addressed. And I'm so grateful that some of you showed up. Thank you so much, because things were not lining up earlier. And I'm seeing comments. I'm not seeing specific questions. And Sophia appears. Love Sophia. That's a whole different thing. Pragmatic Crystal, if you're not familiar with the commentary and the intro, Searching the Scriptures, a feminist commentary, you might want to check that out, because they look for Sophia in the Hebrew Bible, in the Apocrypha, and in the Newer Testament. It's a really lovely collection. Very powerful, especially for someone like you who might appreciate that. And yeah, you bet. So I don't see specific questions, and I'll do a better job tomorrow, kind of focusing in on that perhaps. Genesis chapter 1. It's a creation story. God puts things in motion. And when people focus in on, do a cherry picking of Genesis 1:28 and say, God blessed them and said, be fruitful, multiply, fill the earth and subdue it, have dominion. And the have dominion piece is another conversation for another day. And say, see, this is what God ordained and said and did, and it has to be between a man and woman because they have to be reproductive, right? And that's what marriage is, right? We're just getting way ahead of ourselves. We're getting way ahead of ourselves, putting way too many layers of our expectations of relationships onto it. And like I said, this predates anything Christian, okay? The rabbis were doing it long before Jesus hit the scene. They were reading Genesis 1:28 and 2:24 through this lens of marriage. So the monotheistic traditions have been doing this for a long time, okay? And I'm saying it's okay to challenge whomever said it, because the rabbis were saying it, Jesus says it, Paul says it, they all agree about the way to read these. And I think it's okay for us to challenge even Jesus and even Paul when it comes down to it. I see God talking about some things that applied to the first century, some that might still apply to us, but I'm pretty committed to being honest about where our beliefs and claims go, what actions they lead us to. And insisting that sex be reproductive plays out in a lot of harmful ways, not only in overpopulation, but in telling even hetero couples who can't have children that has these layers of judgment and awful things, actually, when people are trained from childhood to think of their primary thing they need to do is get married to opposite sex and have children, and then they can't do it. Like, All kinds of horrible things happen that way. People leave their faith because they've been told to misread and understand these things, all coming from one verse that's been pulled out of context and misapplied. Okay. I hope that's helpful. We will read, I think we're skipping over to Genesis 3 tomorrow because there's nothing in Genesis. Oh, no, we're reading Genesis tomorrow. Okay. I'll see you around 3 p.m. tomorrow. Thanks for showing up, or thanks for watching in later on, and I will be back tomorrow. See you.